Money is always said to be safe, that the promises of states will last forever. The same old tale. But history tells it differently. Time and again, people woke up one morning to find their savings gone, their wages turned to paper, the systems they thought were rock solid, as weak as a sandcastle. Collapse isn't the exception. More often, it's the normal. The question isn't, will it happen? But when it does, how do you protect yourself? Because money isn't a rock. It's money, meaning trust. And trust can vanish overnight. That's why history is merciless but useful. Every ruin leaves clues, doubts, warnings. If you look closely, you'll see this. Those who weather storms best aren't the most believing. They're the ones who first doubt and prepare. Let's start with Byzantium. Most of us remember it as the eastern half that survived 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. At the center of its economy stood the gold solidus, a coin that for centuries merchants accepted without question from Europe to the Middle East and on to Asia. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it the unofficial reserve currency of the Middle Ages. You might say, with what happened to Rome's silver denarius, surely Byzantium learned its lesson. But no. Centuries later, they played the same game with gold. Its purity was shaved down, alloys were mixed in, it was quietly thinned. At first, no one noticed. Then that invisible thing, trust, began to crumble. A currency that once anchored Mediterranean trade suddenly turned into a story swayed by politics. When money's trust evaporated, the balance of the order collapsed. Who was protected? Those who quietly held real gold instead of legal paper, those who had land and production where the state's arm couldn't reach. The first lesson is here. States struggle to resist the temptation to dilute money. When that day comes, value slips toward the things that can't be printed. But not every ruin comes from rulers laying hands on money. Sometimes life itself wrecks everything. When the Black Death struck in the 14th century, half of Europe perished between 1347 and 1351. Cities emptied, villages went dark, roads fell silent, and trade dispersed. Still, the picture wasn't monochrome. As the population halved, labor grew precious. Those who remained demanded higher wages, and many got them. Food and land were more plentiful relative to the scarcity of people. Those with a bit of silver in their pocket, goods to sell in their hand, or simply the strength to work suddenly gained bargaining power. Ownerless houses, vacant fields. The market favored buyers. Does this look familiar? In COVID, supply chains snapped. Governments printed trillions. Those with cash or easy credit hoovered up assets, while those living paycheck to paycheck fell behind. In the U.S., home prices leapt. Stocks crashed fast, then rebounded fast. Rents rose, while wages couldn't catch inflation. In short, pandemics redistribute wealth. Just as some saw opportunity after the Black Death, those who had cash during COVID did the same. It's not pleasant to say, but it's true. Crisis rewards those with reserves. It crushes those without. Now let's look at the too big to fail fable. In the 1340s, Florence was Europe's financial capital. Giant banks like Bardi and Peruzzi were the treasuries even of kings. When the huge loans extended to England's King Edward didn't come back, the pieces toppled like dominoes. Depositors were burned, trade cooled, the city reeled. The taller the figure, the longer the shadow, but the harder the fall. The lesson is clear. Institutions exist for profit, not for your safety. If they fall, they can drag you down with them. Centuries later, the same melody played under different names at Lehman in 2008 and in Lebanon's banks in 2019. Titles change. Physics doesn't. A similar backstage story played out in the American Civil War. Fronts, speeches, grand politics, but the tale of the Treasury is often skipped. The North printed greenbacks, paper-backed, not by gold, but by the word of the United States. It looked like a bold fix at first, but as the paper multiplied, purchasing power shrank. The South fared even worse. A downpour of graybacks sent inflation berserk. By the end of the war, wages melted before they could be spent, and buying bread with money became an ordeal. In 1865, Confederate currency effectively died. What stood firm then? Not paper promises, but tangible things like land, food, and gold. Many who spent a lifetime saving in paper grew poorer, while those who could access concrete goods scooped up property for pennies. Don't forget, this country has lived through monetary collapse before. Protection came not from banknotes in the wallet, but from values that can't be inflated at will. France in the 1790s is another case study. The revolutionaries treated church lands as collateral and issued assignats. It was as if there was booty Behind the paper, practice said otherwise. Each new issue staggered the value of the previous ones. Prices rose, wages couldn't keep up, farmers and merchants preferred goods and silver over paper. Bread again became an issue in Paris. People realized they wouldn't be able to buy the same loaf tomorrow with the same notes. Who won? Not the person who kept banknotes in a wallet, but the one with wheat, gold, a house. The power of a fine promise lasts only as long as the person across from you accepts it. Jump 2 centuries. The 1997 Asian crisis. Thailand's baht collapsed. Dollar debts became unpayable overnight. Fear spread. From Indonesia to Korea, exchange rates whipsawed. Unemployment rose, economies contracted, IMF prescriptions lined up at the door. The heaviest price wasn't paid by hedge funds, but by ordinary people. Savings eroded, installments ballooned, work dried up. Who got out with less damage? Those who held dollars and overseas assets, those not chained to local currency and foreign currency debt. It looked like a local fire, but it turned into a global wealth transfer. The rule was rewritten. Foreign currency index debt isn't an anchor in a storm, it's ballast that sinks you. In recent history, Lebanon, 2019 to 2021, delivered a separate slap. Banks locked their doors, accounts were frozen, withdrawals capped, the currency evaporated. People lined up to take out their own money and got a no through the glass. Not only small savers, doctors, engineers, retirees, anyone who trusted the system was wounded. Who remained standing? Those who diversified, held foreign accounts, gold, or real estate, those who kept cash outside the bank. The rest were trapped inside the system. Don't think it's far away. In 2008, millions lost their homes while the institutions that birthed the crisis were rescued. In 2020, trillions were printed and asset prices soared. In 2023, a few regional banks wobbling in a single day reminded us how thin that glass called trust really is. If you ask, so what do we do? There isn't a single magic key. In Byzantium, gold protected. After the plague, those with cash could buy underpriced land and houses. Florence taught the value of distance from giant institutions. In the Confederacy, food and land won. In France, bread and property. In Asia, staying away from debt indexed to someone else's currency. In Lebanon, stepping outside the system before the door shut. The forms change. The core stays the same. Lean not on paper and logos, but on things that hold value even in collapse. Now comes the unpleasant but honest paradox. Collapse is both destruction and opportunity. Ruin for the unprepared. For those with preparation, liquidity, and unprintable assets, it's a time to pick up good assets cheaply. Peasants who became landowners after the Black Death, those who, after 2008, bought foreclosed homes with cash. Protection isn't just raising a shield, it's being positioned to make the right move when others are squeezed. But wealth isn't only the answer to what do you own, it's also the answer to what can you do? In every era, those who truly stood firm were the ones who, alongside gold and property, could produce value. The baker who brings out bread, the craftsman who fixes tools, the farmer who tills the field, the merchant who crosses borders. Money can lose its meaning. Production, meeting needs, doesn't. People need to eat, shelter, repair, transport. Those who can meet those needs don't stay poor for long. So, real protection stands on 3 legs. Tangible assets, gold, property, access to the food chain. Tangible skills, from baking bread to writing, code, repair, logistics, accounting, negotiation, and sober awareness, accepting the fragility of systems in advance. Add geographic and currency diversification. Don't tie yourself to a single country, a single bank, a single currency. Manage debt. Avoid debt that doesn't generate income. Be twice as careful if it's indexed to someone else's currency. Liquidity. Don't forget that in a crisis, cash is an option. The door of opportunity usually stays open only briefly. Community. A circle that advises, collaborates, and finds work when needed can be more valuable than capital left alone. And simple things, spending discipline and similar habits. Invest in resilience, not in show. Also remember, every crisis is a transfer, from the true believers to the prepared, from paper promises to tangible value, from passive savings to active production. History has laid this template before us hundreds of times. So the question isn't, will things fall apart? They will. The question is, when that day comes, will you have something real in your hand or just a handful of words? History doesn't copy itself line for line, but when you turn your head, it throws the same stone a second time from the same place. If this narrative lit a spark in you, let's move forward together. Don't forget to subscribe.